If you're struggling with your budget and you're wondering why it's not working for you, then this is the video for you. Now, I predominantly make videos about investing on this channel, but I wouldn't be able to invest if I hadn't got my budget sorted, my savings sorted, which then gave me enough money to be able to invest as well. In today's video, I am going to share with you 5 different budgeting rules to really set yourself up for financial success in the future and to make sure that you're not running out of money every month and that every single penny is working hard for you. Now, I've personally used all of these different budgeting rules for the different stages of my life. I've used them to pay off university debt. I've used them to save up enough of a deposit for my first house. I've also used them to be able to simply stop living paycheck to paycheck. And then finally, I've used them to be able to have money left over to invest in my future. So let's kick things off with rule number 1, and that is setting one clear goal. So obviously when you think about budgeting, it can be very, very overwhelming. You might think, well, I want to achieve this and I want to achieve this, but actually just setting one very clear goal and producing a budget around that single goal can be so helpful. So my first example was paying off debt, and this should be something that you're focusing on first if you do have a lot of high interest debt. So that can be things like credit card debt. Now, if you have a mortgage, that's not really classed as high interest debt, even though obviously interest rates are particularly high at the moment. But I would focus predominantly to start with, if you have any high interest debt, on that being your number 1 goal. So rather than saying, I just want to pay off my debt, you need to get really specific. You need to be clear on how much debt, for example, you have and how long it's going to take you to pay it off. So you may say, for example, I want to pay off this £7,000 credit card debt and I want to pay it off in the next 12 months. So you have a very clear single goal. Obviously, if you don't have debt, you could move on to, say, for example, the next goal that you might have, which might be saving up an emergency fund, and you can set a single goal around that as well. Now, the reason I say you want to be paying off debt first before saving is because interest rates on debt are much higher than any interest that you're going to get with saving. So actually you're losing far more money by not paying off debt than you'd be making if you set that money aside in savings. And the same with investing as well. I would say prioritize paying off debt above saving and investing. And then as you progress through your budget and through your goals, you can start to save and then invest. Obviously, once you've achieved your single goal, you can reset your goal, start all over again and move on to the next goal. And it's really exciting and fulfilling to have one single goal to work on that you can actually achieve. Okay, so the next rule is to set a realistic budget. Now, it's all very well and good if you sit down with a spreadsheet and put together your ideal budget, but actually it might not be realistic. You might not realize just how much you're spending on, say, for example, groceries. I certainly didn't realize how much I was spending on groceries until I sat down and tracked my spending and went through everything with a fine-tooth comb to understand how much I was actually spending so that I knew how much I would have left, if anything, to pay towards my one single goal. Now, obviously you can put this information into a spreadsheet. There are a lot of different budgeting spreadsheets available to buy, but what I will say is maybe avoid spending more money when what you are trying to do is budget. You can find a very simple budgeting spreadsheet. For example, if you go on Numbers on your Apple phone, there is a budget spreadsheet already available to you where you can just plug in your income and your outgoings on there. You could also use a free app to track your spending. I, for example, have used Monzo for many years, and they really helped me get an understanding of how much, for example, I was spending on groceries, because I put all of my money aside and then it categorizes it into the different categories that you're spending. So you've got a really clear budget of how much you're spending and you can really track that over time. And as I said, Monzo is free. I'll pop a link down below to Monzo if you want to give them a go. At the moment, I believe if you open an account with them, you get £10 for free. So what I really want you to avoid doing is saying that you're going to start budgeting and then spending a lot of money on different budgeting apps, different budgeting spreadsheets, maybe buying a new diary to do your budgeting in. You don't have to spend a single penny to get control of your finances. By tracking your spending and taking a close look at your bills, you can see if any areas of your life have potentially got a little bit out of control. So the next rule is 0 zero-based budgeting, and this has been game-changing for me because I really look at where every single pound is going. Because essentially what you're doing is you're looking at your income and you're allocating every single pound to something. This ensures that you know that you have enough money to cover everything that you want to achieve. And it also means that no money is just sitting in your account doing nothing and not working for you. Often if you get to the end of the month and you've still got some money sitting in your account, you might think, oh, I'll just go ahead and buy this, when actually you could be putting that money into savings or investments, or to paying off your mortgage, or to paying off debt. So within that, I obviously do have money that is just spending money. However, I have a very specific amount of money set aside. So if I am asked to do something that might be very expensive, I can clearly see if I can afford it that month or not. So a zero-based budget ensures that you are distributing your money into all of the best places for you. This ensures that every pound is working towards your goals and no money is left aside. Zero-based budgeting forces you to be very intentional with your spending and saving. And the next rule that I have is to pay yourself first. When money comes into your bank account, you really want to prioritize the things that are important to you. So say, for example, if you're looking to pay off debt, the day after the money comes into your bank account, you want to set up a standing order or a direct debit to pay off that debt. Or if your goal is to have an emergency fund set aside in premium bonds, then set up a standing order or a direct debit so that money is coming straight out, so you don't even factor it into your monthly spending. It's your goal, you're going to achieve it, so get that money out of your account and get it working for you. So examples of where I have done this personally for myself is that I have money going automatically into premium bonds, and that is my emergency fund. I also have money going into a high interest savings account. Now that is money that I've set aside to have as a pot of money for potential holidays. So rather than deciding to book a holiday once a year and putting it on a credit card, there's already money set aside with a high interest savings account that is working towards that goal. Then I also have money going out into my self-invested personal pension, which is where I invest for my future and for my retirement. I also then have money automated to come out and go into my stocks and shares ISA. This again is where I'm investing for my future. With the stocks and shares ISA, you can put up to £20,000 into a stocks and shares ISA a year, and any money that you're making on your investments is not taxed. So that is the most tax efficient way of investing because you're not paying any tax on capital gains. So what I think is brilliant about these things is that it took maybe an hour to simply sit down, decide what I wanted to go into each account, and then they're set up, and now I don't have to think about it. I'm not stressing every month about whether I'm saving enough. I'm not stressing about putting money into my pension. I'm not stressing about putting money into my investment ISA. It's simply all gone and done. And similarly, what I also do with my money, and what is also automated for me, is that I put money into different Monzo pots as well. So as I said, I have a Monzo bank account, and within that bank account you can have money put into separate pots. And at the moment those savings pots are paying me 3.6%. And what I do with those savings pots is I have any money that I know is going to be a big expense at some point put into those savings pots on a monthly basis. So say for example I have a pot for my MOT, my car MOT. So I presume that the worst case scenario, that's probably going to cost me around about £1,200. Hopefully that's not the case, but I know that automatically every month I'm putting £100 into that pot of money. It's growing by 3.6% a year, so I'm getting money on the money that I'm setting aside for that. And also I know that by the time my MOT comes around, hopefully it's not going to be £1,200, but if it is, it's not the end of the world. Now these pots don't necessarily have to be for boring things like the car MOT. I also have separate pots for Christmas. December is an incredibly expensive month, so I set aside money every single month for Christmas. And if you want to take your budgeting another step further, then the next rule is the 50-30-20 rule. This rule is a simple way to budget without overcomplicating things. It helps ensure that you're budgeting wisely and that you're making room for savings and investments. So once you've paid off all your debt, this might be something that is worth considering. So I have my budget and I have broken it down into these different sections to see where I'm currently sitting at the moment. So 50% of your budget needs to go for needs. So that's things like housing, mortgages, food, utilities, and bills. 30% for wants, so that is discretionary spending like entertainment, dining out, and hobbies, and then 20% for savings and investments. And this is where you really prioritize growing your wealth and making sure that you have enough money to retire, investing in the stock market, and seeing your money grow over time. Now, what I will say is this is kind of the ideal breakdown of where you want your budget to be. However, at the moment, the cost of living is exceptionally expensive, and I am aware of that. So although I would like to have only 50% of our money going into our needs, actually around about 60% of our money is going to our needs. So obviously it's not always possible to meet all of these, particularly at really expensive times of life, for example when you have young children, but I do think this is a really useful rule to aim for. I think the most important percentage that we're seeing here is that 20% of money is going into savings or investments, and that is something that you can really aim for in the future. So I know what it feels like to be living paycheck to paycheck and to not be able to be saving any money at all. But ideally, if you can get to a point where you're saving and investing 20% of your income, I think that would be a very, very comfortable place to be. So say for example you're earning £2,500, then £1,250 that would go to your needs, £750 would go to wants, and £500 into savings or investments. So I've personally used every single one of these rules at different stages of my life to meet my financial needs. There's that old saying that if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail, and I certainly think this is the case with budgeting. Don't get me wrong, I completely understand that everything is very expensive and the cost of living is extortionate at the moment, but I hope that you find some of the rules in this video are helpful to being able to plan a budget and really get a clear idea of where you are financially. I personally use a combination of all of these different rules together, and hopefully in the future will leave me much more financially comfortable, because I do have an understanding of how stressful it can be to be struggling financially. So I really hope these budgeting rules are helpful. As I said, don't go away and spend any money on budgeting. Try and make use of free apps. Maybe even just use a pen and paper to get your budget sorted and your goals sorted. Or you can, for example, use an existing spreadsheet. You don't need to go away and spend any more money on budgeting. You just need to spend a little bit of time automating things, getting everything under control, working on that zero-based budget, having a really good idea of where you're spending money, really track your spending through something like, say for example, the Monzo app. You can obviously just track your spending on paper, whatever works for you. But if you can get your budget under control, I'm sure you will feel much better every month, and I'm sure you can get yourself into a really strong financial position. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the comments down below. If you've taken any value whatsoever from this video, I would absolutely love it if you would like and subscribe. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Bye bye.